Hi, it's Kiffin Lobates here, and today I want to talk about the use of language in the blockchain and crypto space in order to control the narrative, that is, set the tone and guide the story which describes where we may proceed next in the blockchain space. And what I want to talk about particularly is the use of a phrase by governments and by regulatory bodies for wallets. And the phrase that is used is self-hosted wallet. And the use of this language is actually rather clever because it reframes the discussion from blockchain wallets having a particular function and place socially from that of the control of the user to that of control of the government in question. And when you look at the phrase self-hosted wallet, as you dig down into it and unpack it, you'll discover that it is a ludicrous phrase. So first, a bit about the use of language in order to control the narrative. And an example there, a rather extreme example, would be the case of a radical political group describing themselves as freedom fighters, whereas a government describing them as terrorists. Which one is the correct label would be open to discussion, and it's quite a difficult decision to make because it really depends on your perspective. I don't think you can get true objectivity here. And the same kind of discussion is now happening in decentralized finance. The European Union is bringing in all sorts of regulation to control the blockchain space to the best of their ability. And one of the things that the central banks and the Union have done is describe blockchain wallets installed by a user on their own PC and under their own control as being self-hosted. Now, I happen to think that this phrase is ludicrous in the same way that I would never talk about a €5 note in my wallet or a $10 note in my physical wallet as being a self-hosted banknote. And yet that is exactly what this terminology does. And what it also does is illustrate how society has shifted in the digital age. Back when my grandparents were still alive, most of life was, to use the term, self-hosted. You physically possessed your money. There wasn't an organization or an entity that could control what you do with it. You had more control over your identity in that your papers that described who or attested who you were things like birth certificates, and the social relationships you had within the community that you lived were another factor in that. Now that we've moved into a digital world, those digital artifacts need to be stored somewhere, and they are stored on centralized servers, which you or I have little if no control over. And the same has happened for our finances. We have moved from using cash to using digital payments, and as a result, we have given the banks an immense amount of power. In Finland, if you want to use cash and you go to an ATM, you will find that after 3 or 4 withdrawals in a particular month, they start charging you a heavy fee for continuing to use cash. And this is part of an activity to discourage the use of cash and make people move towards digital payments, which is of great advantage to the government because it allows them to get closer access to how it is that you transact, who you transact with. And in Finland, the main concern is about taxation because Finland is a very tax-obsessed country. In other, more oppressive regimes, this could be a problem because the more digital our transactions become, the easier it is for a government to selectively censor or repress a particular minority that they're not fond of. And so back to this term, self-hosted wallet and self-hosted address. Well, that's actually the norm. There should not need to be a modifier in front of blockchain wallet to describe which type it is if you are going with the default, which is one that you install yourself, you control and you possess, and that is beyond the reach of the authorities. And it should be exchanges and banks that hold crypto and tokens on your behalf that are described as custodial. That would be a more sensible use of the language from a more truthful perspective. But of course, what the authorities want to do is to regulate, and therefore a simple technique to do so, and they're probably doing this instinctively. I don't think there's a committee that sat down and thought, what term can we use to reframe the conversation to our benefit? I think the term arose naturally But it really does highlight the way in which our society has changed, in that something that used to be the default now has this strange term tacked onto it. So I haven't got any solutions for this. I haven't got a full assessment of the problem, or even if there is a problem, but I think it's something worth keeping in mind, that when these terms are used, you start questioning, well, what's the agenda behind the agency that is using those terms? And in the case of blockchain, I don't think it's a particularly positive one. I hate the phrase self-hosted wallet and self-hosted address. But I don't think there is very much that you or I as individuals can do about it, other than just to keep an eye on it and keep awareness of it, and maybe we together can change the conversation back into something more sensible and more appropriate for the individual user. Anyway, that's a brief chat on self-hosted wallets and self-hosted addresses and why those terms are ridiculous. I hope you found it interesting, and I'll see you in the next video soon. Bye for now.